Well, it won't be long now before we know who the new leader of the United Kingdom will be. Tim Montgomerie joins me to discuss it all in a moment. Now, we know there's Jeremy Hunt is in the race, of course, and Boris Johnson. We all think Boris Johnson will get there. How sure are we in the UK? 160,000 members of the Conservative Party will make this decision. And analysis says Johnson will win. But winning the election, I have to say, is the easy part. It's Brexit that's causing political convulsions. The deadline at the moment is still the end of October, which will mean Brexit with a bad deal, Brexit with no deal, an early election or further limbo with another extension from the EU Masters. Joining me tonight to go through the ins and outs and his expectations is leading Tory Brexiteer, founder of Conservative Home, a centre-right political blog in the United Kingdom and former editorial page editor of The Times. Tim Montgomerie. Gee, you would be a man that is in much demand tonight, Tim, so thank you for joining us here in Australia. Are the pundits right? Do we expect to see Boris Johnson become the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom later on today?
Well, Peter, it's lovely to be on your show again. Thank you for having me. And I will give you a promise. If Boris Johnson does not become Conservative leader today, I will come back on your programme tomorrow and eat my hat, because I'm not sure of many things in politics, in British politics at the moment. It's a very unstable time, but I think Boris will win today. He actually, in terms of process, he becomes party leader tomorrow and Prime Minister. He becomes party leader today, Prime Minister tomorrow. And I think he'll win 2/3, perhaps more, of the votes of Tory members. And that's important because it will enable him to go to members of Parliament, Tory members of Parliament, and say, at least give me a chance. The party rank and file want my agenda to happen. And let's see if that, let's have a little bit of grace towards him from the Parliament.
Yeah, I do think that the point you make there about having the party base behind him gives him an authority that I think that over time was I think partly the reason why Theresa May has ended her term as Prime Minister as such a politically diminished figure, certainly in Conservative terms. But what does a Boris Johnson Prime Ministership look like in terms of Brexit? What's his plan for Brexit? We know that a number of his front benches, we'll get into that in a moment, are already headed for the door. What's his immediate plan?
That is the big question. And I don't know whether all of your viewers know, but the Tories have a majority of 3 in the British Parliament. There is widespread expectation that in the next day or two, perhaps a little bit longer, but could be very quickly, 2, 3, a handful of Tory MPs who are die-hard Remainers, who've never accepted the referendum result, will leave the Conservative Party. So it's possible that whatever plan Boris Johnson has for Brexit, he will lose his majority almost overnight. And Britain has voted quite a lot recently on lots of issues, but I don't want to make a prediction other than the one I've already made with you, Peter, that Boris Johnson will become Prime Minister, but a general election could happen incredibly quickly.
Tim, I want to ask you a question here. You just mentioned there that they could well end up in a snap election if some of these Remainer Tories quit the Conservative Party the moment that Johnson is elected leader, elected PM. Are you talking about an election that would occur in and around this 31 October Brexit date?
It's possible. Almost anything is possible in British politics at the moment, Peter. And I think Australia's called the lucky country, isn't it? And I just envy your stability at the moment, because there's been a paralysis in British politics for a long... there's a paralysis in British politics really at the moment. And the basic problem is that democracy can only work if the people who lose elections or lose referenda accept the results. And we have a substantial proportion of British parliamentarians who simply are so committed to the idea of membership of the European Union that they won't accept the result. So I think it's a good thing that Boris Johnson is taking over from Theresa May. She always saw Brexit as a risk minimisation exercise, rather than an opportunity for Britain to become a big player in world trade again, forging trade deals with, for example, Australia. And so while Boris's optimism and can-do attitude is welcome, the thing that doesn't change is the parliamentary arithmetic. It's possible it might even get worse for him. So at some point, I think the deadlock will have to be broken by a general election.
Yeah, look, and a general election in those sorts of circumstances would be almost like a de facto referendum. I can't see that there'd be any other issue bigger than the Brexit issue. And you may well find this is where people really vent their frustration at the Tories, who say that they were a party in broad terms of Brexit with a few recalcitrants, but that the parliamentarians are disconnected from at least the Tory base and broadly the British base. Now, just on that point, of course, a general election would be diabolical unless the Tory party can have some sort of accommodation with Nigel Farage, particularly when you look at how well he's done recently. Yes,
you're right in your analysis. And Theresa May steps down as Prime Minister in the next 24 hours. And I hope this isn't it sounds like hyperbole, but she may have destroyed the Conservative Party, one of the oldest and longest parties in the world, through bad leadership. The Conservative Party, as you said it would deliver Brexit. It hasn't. The main reason it's won elections in Britain over the years is because it is seen as the competent party, and yet it has been completely incompetent again and again and again. So, yes, I do think a general election is likely, but the Conservative Party goes into that election, yes, with a new positive leader, but it goes in with a record of untrustworthiness that is really dangerous. And if the Brexit Party, as you say, led by Nigel Farage, is a powerful force in that political situation, the Conservative Party really could be in big trouble.
Of course, in all of this, Tim, we're looking at, quite seismic splits on the centre-right with the Tories, and you've got Remain. You've got a new leader for the Lib Dems. She could cause the left side of Tory politics some issues. And, of course, you've got the great winner out of this is Jeremy Corbyn, which would be diabolical for Britain. I think diabolical for anyone else in a Western democracy who deals with Britain. But, of course, all these revelations in recent weeks about the strident anti-Semitism that is inside the modern Labor Party.
Well, it's a game that's a bit silly, really, but you could say who is in more trouble, the Labour Party or the Conservative Party? Both of the big parties did really badly in the European elections. I think I came on your programme the morning afterwards to talk about it. But I would probably say, just on the margins, Labour is in bigger trouble because Boris Johnson is a charismatic, hopeful figure. The Conservative Party does have something of a new chance under him. Labour, in contrast, is even more divided than the Conservative Party. And Jeremy Corbyn's ratings absolutely slumped since the last election, partly because of the anti-Semitism issue. But he doesn't do much media. There is accusations that he's tired and not particularly well. And so Labour have big problems too. So you probably wouldn't see a Labour government emerge if the Tories lost power. I think you get more of the kind of muddle, hung parliament disunity that has plagued British politics since the last general election.
Just before we go, is he going to have some good people around him? Are there, good front benches that we hear there'll be a lot of resignations? People like Philip Hammond will take his bat and ball and go home to the backbench. Are there going to be good people around him to give him a best chance for the Brits to now leave the EU?
I hope so, but Peter, I say good riddance to people like Philip Hammond. They've sat in, very important cabinet jobs, saying that they would do all they could to implement Brexit, and in reality, they fought Brexit in every way they really could. What I'm hopeful about Boris is that he'll be the kind of Ronald Reagan figure at the top of government, and he'll appoint good people. I hope someone like Sajid Javid might become Chancellor. They'll get on with the detailed work. And unlike Theresa May, who really was a control freak, she didn't really allow her ministers much freedom. Boris will be the cheerleader at the top of this government, and then he'll have very competent ministers around him who'll get on with putting Britain back on track.
Tim Montgomerie, thank you for bearing with our technical difficulties there, but, a little bit of a message from Australia. No one thought Scott Morrison could do it either. He did, and now the government is absolutely in the ascendancy, and Labor are the ones with the problem. So let's just see what happens when we know the result later on tonight. Thank you very much for your time.